every successful person got there by going through tough times. Success is a hard-ass teacher who likes to knock you around along that journey. You know, it takes real guts to not give up and keep going. We'll hear stories about failures and how these leaders flip the script to create success. I'm John Schultz. Join me and let's discover how success is never really overnight. So welcome to the John Schultz podcast. We have an amazing guest today, Wei Li. What a career, what a great person. She joined BlackRock in 2010. She was the head of investment strategy, ETF and index investments. And today she is Global Chief Investment Strategist of BlackRock Investment. Huge company, so many assets, so many places in the world you have to think about. Very exciting job. And thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet you, John.
Great to see you. All right. So what I love about my podcast is we start real early. I feel with all the guests that I've had on, and we've had a lot now, thankfully, the stories that are shaped when people are young, some of the things that they go into in the future were shaped by that. So I'd like to start out by saying, how would you describe yourself in your upbringing and your childhood when you're growing up?
Wow. Okay. So we're going all the way back. All right. So I was born in China, in this very little known city called Chongqing that has 36 million people. So just sitting in the middle of China. And growing up, it was a simple childhood. My parents were teachers in Chongqing, but as China opened up, they gave up their steady job in the middle of China to join the coastal south opening up, and they took me with them. So this ability of theirs, or the courage of theirs to just restart, give up everything and restart, I think very much impacted me up to this day. And following them to coastal south in China, growing up in a city called Shenzhen, a very small city of 20 million people. And and then I had the opportunity to study overseas in Singapore, in the UK. And after I graduated from the UK university where I studied mathematics, I then came to London, and that's how I started in finance.
Wow. So were there any things, during that time that pushed you towards finance? Like what made you think that was something for you? What other hobbies did you have? What other things did you, or were you interested in growing up?
Well, I was always interested in mathematics. It's like a beautiful language that transcends borders, that transcends kind of different ways of thinking, and it's very logical. So I was studying mathematics in university. And at the time, the ultimate year, all the cool kids in school were applying for internship in Wall Street, in Canary Wharf, and I was like, okay, what was the fuss about? So, I was a very competitive person, so I applied for what everybody was applying for, and I was lucky to get a few offers, and the rest is history. I wouldn't say that I planned to be in finance from the very beginning. Frankly, I didn't really quite know what finance was, but it was really this competitive spirit that pushed me in this direction, and I really liked what I experienced on the trading floor, and then subsequently in asset management, and I stayed.
So you said you studied abroad. Where did you study, and how did that go?
I studied in Singapore for 4 years, and I studied in the UK for my undergrad degree. How did that go? I was quite good in school, so it went quite well.
Good. Good. And what was the first job you had coming out of college?
First job I had coming out of college, I started my career in finance in Lehman Brothers, so rates, sales trading. And then I went to Citigroup on the equity derivative trading desk. And then from Citigroup, I moved to BlackRock, initially starting in the ETF business, as you mentioned, John. And then I moved into kind of the broader platform of BlackRock Investment Institute and took up the role of the Global Chief Strategist. So all the roles, I think, are very much related in that they require a very quick way of thinking and digesting incoming information. But the way to kind of express the ideas, they differ from role to role.
What were some of the challenges you faced, I guess going into your first job, being in a career that was new to you? What are some things that you think shaped the direction you went, or some of the decisions that you made, and and how you move forward really in your career?
Absolutely. So challenges, as you see, John, I grew up in China. I grew up in Singapore. I grew up in the UK. English is not my first language. So then starting a job on the trading floor where everybody speaks very, very quickly, like it was a real problem. I could barely understood what people were talking about. And then having to articulate my views and really getting my voice across in a debate, it was intimidating to start with, right? And I don't speak very quickly, and I need to organize my thought before I articulate them. So that was a real challenge with the language initially. But then at some point, I think my mindset just switched, in that I'm like, okay, people know that my English is not very good, but maybe that can be my get out of jail free card. So if I were to say something stupid, people will think that, oh no, poor thing, is because her English is not very good. But if I were to say something smart, they will give me they will give me all the credit and think that, well, that's because Wei is super smart. So once I think like that, English not being my first language become my superpower, in that it's my get out of jail free card, and it allows people to give me the benefit of the doubt if I say something not so clever, right? So it's not so much about kind of improving in the language itself, but it's about kind of making a mental switch in my head as I interact in this dynamic environment. And so I would say that's the first challenge that I had, and I was able to kind of turn that into an advantage, and this mindset of turning the table and really kind of thinking about how I can change things to my advantage has been something that I try to keep every step of the way.
I love that, because I think we look at things through our own projections of what we think is happening, or or triggers of what we've had in our lives that have happened to us. And one of the key phrases I always say to myself when I'm looking at a situation that may feel uncomfortable, or maybe I have doubts, is like, let me look at this a different way.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is that you made this into a superpower. Like, you even made it into a bigger sort of push for your mindset to get through things. I think that's incredible. It's almost like you could come up with crazy ideas, and you felt, it was something that if something stuck, it was good. If not, it was just like, okay, maybe I didn't understand it as well enough. Are there any other jewels like that, being in such a high paced, fast, large market cap business, that you feel you learn, because, you've been at multiple companies now? Is there anything you could tell the younger generation that would, maybe give them some good ideas?
Absolutely. So maybe I say two things. First is that I think it's important to be comfortable with just 80% good enough, right? So when I first started working, I was quite good at school, and I was a perfectionist. So everything I was given, I really spent all the time and energy to make sure that it was like done 100% before I submitted, before I kind of move on to the next task. And that was fine, and that was good, and it was important in building the credibility of being able to do something to 100% good. But the downside of that is sometimes I submit the output late because I wanted it to be perfect, or and because of that I didn't get given more important things because I was always busy trying to take the task to 100% good. And what I then subsequently realized is that oftentimes, especially in a fast-paced environment, where you need to react to something very, very quickly, and then there's something else that comes along, and you need to react to that piece of information very, very quickly. Just getting to 80% is more than good enough. And in fact, having the reputation of being able to dynamically and holistically react, because you're able to process things very, very quickly, is just as important as having the reputation of being able to do something to 100% perfection. And I think recognizing when is the time for 100% and when is the time for 80% is a critical skill set that one needs to develop through the course of your career, and then being comfortable as a perfectionist with just being 80% good enough is important as well. So that's the first thing I would say, and I really had to learn it the hard way as I came through the different roles that I have had. And the second thing I would say is this is a piece of advice I was given on the trading floor from the senior investor that I was working with back then. And his comment to me was, Wei, you're just starting out. Just make sure you are replaceable. I'm like, what do you mean? You mean irreplaceable, right? My English is not very good. You mean irreplaceable? I heard irreplaceable. He's like, no, just make sure that you're replaceable. Make sure nothing goes wrong when you go on holiday, and make sure that when new opportunities come up, you can be in a position to be elevated because nothing is going to drop and nothing is going to go wrong. And so that's somewhat counterintuitive in that, especially in a environment where things are difficult and markets can be tough, and the natural tendency is to build a moat around what you do and be very irreplaceable so nobody can touch me. But against that natural tendency, I really went out of my way to make sure that I am the most replaceable person on the team. I have a little book of what I do every day. I have that I share with everyone. I have notebooks of the projects that I'm responsible for, so people know exactly what went in and exactly what went out and what to do with it. And then as I did all of that, new opportunities came up, and as the decision makers look around the floor and say who we could elevate to take this new responsibility, the two questions that they would ask is this person good? And then also, can we kind of take this person out of the existing role? And being replaceable allowed me to say yes to the second question. And then obviously, the first criteria is that you gotta be good. But this is actually a really great piece of advice that I was very grateful to have been given very early on in my career. And through being very replaceable every step of the way, I've had the luck and the privilege to be given responsibilities that I then was able to step up into.
I think that's brilliant. I've heard that before from different people that, at the end of the day, you'll be stuck in your job if someone else can't step up and have that role. How do you think the people that worked in your group benefited from that mindset? And do you see that was a contagious mindset from people that within the companies that you worked at that created a bigger picture for them as well? Like how did that? Is that would you say someone that leads needs to deploy successfully?
Yeah, two things I would say in response to that, John. The first is that how do people benefit from this mindset? Well, it's great for cross-learning and cross-training when new joiners come onto the team, when new junior members start out in their career. If everybody operate with a I want to be replaceable mindset, then this open book mindset, then people can learn and the team can progress effectively, right? So that's the first thing. So it's clearly beneficial. But the second thing I would say is that I think in order for this to be truly part of the culture from a senior manager perspective, we need to put in a incentive system, incentive scheme that actually rewards people that operate in a open book mindset, right? So the reason that people sometimes can close themselves up is because they're fearful of being replaced. They're and if we recognize people who are training the rest of the team to be more effective by giving up their learnings and secrets and tricks and experiences, then actually that helps create this culture where collectively it's greater than the sum of parts.
Absolutely. And it's more fun. I think people at that point own their jobs, their roles. Everyone wants to feel that they're adding to the picture. So I think it's tremendous. And people can sense when someone's holding back and not allowing them to feel their growth. And great leaders do not do that. So, all right, you had all these amazing sort of stepping stones in different great companies. You landed at BlackRock. What a great company, huge company, and, a leader in lots of different ways. So what would you say is some of the most exciting parts about your current role today? And the cool thing that I love about your story is, here you are, English wasn't your first language, and like you're CNBC, you're Bloomberg, you're all over TV, and everyone can enjoy your knowledge. So what would you say are some of the best, most exciting things you do today?
Yeah, sure. John, I don't know if you can tell, I'm actually an introvert. So, speaking in public and speaking in a big group setting doesn't come naturally to me. So, what's actually really interesting about my job is about pushing the boundary to enjoy a situation that I do not naturally have a natural affinity for, right? So I'm an introvert. How do I kind of push myself to embrace and enjoy the public speaking side of my job? Like I rolled out this grassroots initiative within BlackRock called Quiet Riot that allows introverts to really navigate a more loud environment and really share tips about how to do public speaking and how to maybe even navigate small talks during drinks, that sort of thing. So that has been fun. My job makes me see the importance of that, and being able to kind of progress and bring more people on that journey has been hugely rewarding. I would also say another aspect of my job. So when I first started working as an investment strategist, going from an investor to an investment strategist, again, the public speaking part is the new dimension of the job. And back then, my direct manager, Steve Cohen, who is now the head of BlackRock in the EMEA region, but back then he was responsible for investment strategy, and he's still this middle-aged white man that gives market presentations and have market conversations with clients. So I was kind of learning from him. And I was trying to learn not only the content but also the style, because he was doing it so well and so effortlessly. So I was copying his jokes about politics. I was copying his opening about football, and I tried to deliver that when I was then presenting the presentation. And then it never worked, right? Like it never worked because I couldn't care less about football and so at that point Steve gave me this piece of advice that has been very helpful to me to this day, which is that you can never be a better Steve Cohen than Steve Cohen, but you can be a better version of Wei Li. So really think about what is unique about you and make that your superpower. So the English aspect, English is one way of doing that, but then he gave me another tip that I sometimes still use, which is that, well, you have this unique kind of background of growing up in China, growing up in Singapore, growing up in the UK, And many of the people that you speak with do not have this diverse background. So why don't you, like start your conversations or presentations with a Chinese saying? And then, you could then build the narrative kind of from there. And then who is going to challenge your Chinese saying? Because, like you're the most times the only Chinese speaking person in the group. So understanding where my unique dimension is and really turning that to my advantage and unique characteristic is a great lesson. So I never try to be a middle-aged white man anymore, and I just try to be a better version of myself.
Well, you're being you. Like that, you can't be a better you. I mean, but once you embrace that, like that's when our superpowers appear, right? Because it's all confidence and I like. It's funny you say about this introvert. So, my business is real estate, and we own office buildings, and we own places that people gather. And I always said to myself, like, we're building these big open bullpens, forgetting about 50% of the people are introverts. And what are we doing? So I think the whole environment of how we work has to be a little bit rethought about. There are people that are introverts and they're not the same as extroverts. And how do we commingle everyone in a space to make it, better for everyone? And, it's talking about space, and you're talking about, training people to replace you, creating all these little tidbits of advice that you got being around people. What's your feeling about like this whole thing since COVID with work at home and remote work? And do you feel the generation after us will have the same benefit of all the things that you learned the way it's going now?
Absolutely. Actually, John, can I unpack something that you just talked about in terms of introverts? And I'm going to link that into this work from home question that you just
Absolutely.
asked, because they're very much related. So, there is this misconception about introverts not liking or not being able to interact with people or not being able to do public speaking. Actually, that's totally wrong, in that introverts and extroverts, the definition is representative of how individuals would like to recharge. It's not representative of the ability. So introverts can do all of the things that we just talked about, but then when we are tired, we like to recharge by ourselves, rather than kind of mingling with people and talking things out loud, right? So here the difference is that I'm an introvert and my husband is an extrovert. So by the end of each long working day, we both go home, and I want to relax by just being by myself on the couch, and then he wants to relax by talking about his day. So this is kind of where the only differences are. But in terms of how we kind of navigate the dynamics in the office and interaction with people and doing public speaking and speaking up at big meetings, it's actually quite hard to tell the difference, because it's more about preferences rather than ability. So that's the first thing I would say. But then linking to your question, Jean, about the working from home, the pandemic, I think if there is one silver lining that comes out of this tragic 2 years and a half that the whole world kind of experienced, is that it shows that actually flexibility is possible, right? Flexibility is possible. There have been just incredible kind of examples of how technology brought the world together in an effective way, and I think that it's important not to forget that. Now, having said that, even introverts like me missed the office terribly during lockdowns. I was very, very happy that finally things are kind of getting back to normal. But remembering, like thinking about kind of the pendulum swing, we went from 100% in the office to 100% at home, and now we're swinging back, really being thoughtful about the benefits of different styles and how to kind of bring them together is important, and not to forget. And now it feels like the pendulum is swinging towards more presence in the office, which makes sense because we came from the terrible 2.5 years that was the pandemic, and it feels great to be back in the office.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I listen, I feel flexibility is paramount to our brains feeling okay, right? Like you need to feel you can have that in your life. I just hope that we all like know that, like, I don't know, most of the greatest things I learned was from someone that I didn't realize I was going to be with that moment. It was all happenstance. So we need a combination, I think, because I think it's going to be good for everyone involved. Okay, so here you are now in this, you're been in this job. Can you give us a little bit about some of the current responsibilities that you have today? Obviously, we see you because you're public on different channels, and a little bit about maybe more about what you focus on week in and week out.
Absolutely. So, myself and my team leverage the macro insights portfolio construction research to generate asset allocation views across equities, bonds, public market, private market. And we take those insights to, on the one hand, clients across the world, on the other hand, investors from across the platform internally. So as I think about kind of my job, I spend, I would say, half of the time generating content, thinking about ideas, working with the team to stress test and really making sure that the stuff that we bring to the table are of great quality. And I spend the other half equally divided between making sure that we deliver the content to external stakeholders that are our clients and internal stakeholders that are investors. And the conversations are two ways in that I oftentimes, having produced the content and the ideas, then go into discussions only to be persuaded actually the reverse, the opposite of the ideas make more sense. So I often learn a lot from clients and investors from all across the world, which is why, especially at a time like this when markets are super interesting and super volatile, and we're really in uncharted territories in terms of the regime change, I feel very, very privileged and lucky to be in this seat and to have this platform, because it's a incredibly enriching learning experience for me personally and professionally.
It sounds daunting to me, like global investment strategist. Like, where do you start? What are some of the challenges like you have to get your brain around week in and week out on where you like, because these are all ideas, right? So how do you frame yourself without feeling overwhelmed every week on where you start and maybe give some insight to that?
Yeah, I think the challenge, and now kind of tying back to what we talked about earlier in terms of the mindset of processing quick and a vast incoming information. The challenge is to look through the noise. The challenge is to cut through the noise, because markets will focus on one narrative at a time, but market's attention span is also very, very short. So it can pivot between narratives very, very quickly, and not having an anchor means that one gets lost very easily amid a huge amount of information that one gets presented with on a daily basis, right? So the challenge is to really have the anchor and the conviction to look through the noise, to cut through the noise. And in order to do that, having a very coherent framing of how the world operates and how economies is evolving is important, which is why now giving a little bit more details now, the way that we have been kind of articulating the world after the pandemic, i.e. We're in a new regime because the drivers of economic cycles just went from demand side of the equation to supply constraint. That anchor has really helped me and my team process incoming information in a truly, I believe, additive way to our clients and investors.
It's amazing. I guess you're right. You have to frame how you're going to look at what you're looking at a certain point and sort of see how it's flowing from that premise. And we had such a tragic 2 years of the, what went on with the pandemic, and everything, if you look now, is changed a bit, right? So you got to, and that's like not being afraid to be uncomfortable, like looking at things in a new way, which, your firm does and you do. And it must be exciting to dive into that every day. It's terrific. So maybe a couple fun questions before we end. What do you enjoy outside of investing? I mean, obviously you put a lot of time and energy into this. Is there anything you like as hobbies or outside what you do?
I love golf, but golf does not love me back. Oh, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. I might be playing at a Pro-Am tournament next year. I have been training for that. And there are days where my game is good, but on most other days, my game is not good. And it's so frustrating because it's not a straight line. It's not like you put in the hours and you just improve. You can put in the hours and then your whole kind of swing just breaks down. And you're like, why
somebody gave me a great saying that I say to myself every time I play. We've only rented the game. We do not own it. It's a rental. And some days the rental shows up and other days it doesn't. But it's an amazing life sport, friend sport, business sport. It's worth the aggravation and it's challenging, right? You always got to, and it's a mental game. So I think it has a lot of the things that actually give you good skill sets to be great at business.
That's right, business and also life. The reason that I picked up golf in the first place was really because my husband played golf a lot, and then I realized, I travel all the time and I work a lot during the week, and if I don't play golf over the weekend, I basically don't see my husband. So that's how I picked up. And but as
that's terrific.
Now also playing golf, like what in his book is the romantic kind of gesture gift is a golf weekend getaway. I think he's benefiting from that more than me. But
well, listen, at least you're doing it together, so that's fun. You can do some other things while you go to, and there are some beautiful golfers. I mean, it's fun. You get to see so many different places. So another one, if your career was in finance wasn't an option, what else would you do if you weren't in finance?
I might become a sushi chef.
Really?
I love the omakase chef. Like I love the precision and the beauty that is part of kind of being a sushi chef, and the knives and everything. There's something very cathartic and therapeutic.
And it's creative. It's like art.
It is creative. It is creative, and it's creative in a contemporary art type of way, in that they create this thing as the consumer of the omakase. You don't quite get it, but you're like, okay, it must be good because it comes from the chef. So there's something very, very nice about it. So I might want to become that, but I may not be able to because I love food too much. So I might just end up eating them all.
Well, maybe listen, you can do it part-time, right? You can do it at home for yourself. You don't need the. But I love that you love that. That's so good. In golf, I love golf. It's good for you. It's I find. We all need balance of, and I'm not saying like balance isn't like a certain time slot to do things. It's just having other things that you can learn and be and do just opens up us to everything that we're doing, in total. So I think it's a good thing. So anyway, so thank you so much for doing this. This was so good. I learned a lot. You reinforced a lot for me. And I just love the way you think and how you go about your process of talking about it. And it's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for having me. I look forward to following you going forward. I really have fun.
Hi, John Schultz here. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Would really appreciate it if you would like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Looking forward to being with you soon.